Hello everyone, I'm Patsy Carruthers, and I'm presenting today on my Alternative Spring Break experience. The Alternative Spring Break program accepts applications each year to work on a project for a week at a prestigious library, such as the Library of Congress or the National Archives and Records Administration. You're paired with a librarian or an archivist, and you have a defined set of activities. My alternative spring break adventure in March 2024 was spent working on an assignment with the University of Maryland, Baltimore's Health Sciences and Human Services Library. Among their many historic documents are a series of medical school lecture notes from the 19th century. I have a particular interest in public transcription projects, which my mentor for the week found interesting, and she asked me to pull together some information about those types of projects in case she could use them at UMB to support their work. My primary assignment, though, was to transcribe lecture notes by Dr. John Monkur. I selected his 22nd lecture titled Broussais' Theory of Fever. It was really fascinating to read through the notes because it involved concepts that I recognized were in a growth phase of contemporary understanding at the time. It was also challenging because some of the handwriting and the antiquated spelling and obscure references were difficult to grasp at times. But once I got into it, I heard Dr. Monkur's voice, and let me tell you, that man knew how to throw some shade. He may have had to teach Broussais' theory, but that doesn't mean he necessarily agreed with everything Dr. Broussais had to say back in the day. His digs were subtle, but a rewarding grace note to a close reading assignment. This is what my week looked like. There was a lot of squinting and second guessing what I was seeing. I had to research many unfamiliar names and terms, and to be honest, I spent some quality time with my friend Google too. There were unfamiliar doctors and scientists and experiments, as well as some Latin and French phrases here and there. I found many a rabbit hole, and I was encouraged to go down them all. Sometimes I had to laugh because I would read a word and think, yeah, there is no way that's a word. But on a chance, I'd pop it into Google or Google Translate, and yes, it in fact was a word almost every time. This was my week. Sometimes it was fairly easy to translate. Other times it was most certainly not. However, as I translated and transcribed, I had a window into how doctors were coming to understand illness and fever. And I can see how having these handwritten documents transcribed into searchable PDFs would be interesting to researchers and those in the medical field. All right, now it's quiz time. What do you see in these circled words? These were some of my rabbit holes. For the first one, I thought, am I reading French? Is it Sue? Wait, is it Sonos? What would that even mean at the time? By rereading the paragraphs before and catching the name of a doctor and his studies, I was able to learn that the word was solids. Solids in this case referred to organs as opposed to blood and other fluids. Okay, the next one I had to learn very early because it was all through the document. Even though I quickly learned what it was, it still stopped me in my typing every time. It is tissues. In the handwriting of the time, that first S in so many words looked like an F. The last one really threw me for a loop. I could see we were talking about oxalic acid, which I had no frame of reference for. Devon grams? Is that a type of gram? By Googling, I found that oxalic acid was measured in grains, and that helped. Again, I backed up in the document to find a doctor's name and experimentation, and I discovered the exact study. It was 7 grains. I cannot tell you how proud I was of myself for finding that. By the end of the work, I felt like Dr. Monkur and I had an understanding of sorts. He wasn't going to give me any clues. I was going to have to work for it, just like his students. But he would drop in some gems from time to time. Perhaps my favorite was at the end, where he admonished his students to avoid the arbitrary doctrines that were dividing the medical professionals of the day. That was in the final portion of the lecture. But then, after a few blank pages, was something else. I like to think he jotted it down to decide how strongly he was going to word his statement on the matter. In his final scribbled words, he warned his students that those who follow those arbitrary doctrines know nothing of the disease and are dangerous practitioners. Dr. Monkur definitely had feelings on this subject. In my last few slides, I'll share a bit about my side quest, which was to delve into public transcription projects. I looked at both the public volunteer type and the AI-assisted type. These are projects to transcribe documents, much as I did during my alternative spring break, but with the help of the public or with the help of software. I found that the public volunteer project may be less expensive in terms of software, but it requires a lot of planning and coordination, and its main costs would be in personnel time. The software that most were using to organize the work was called From the Page. I have a few examples, and I'll list these with the notes under my presentation if you're interested in viewing them. I particularly like the Library of Congress Citizen Archivist project, and they have a lot of nice resources there for volunteers. Here are some resources to learn more about the AI-assisted project types. It seems to me that Transcribus was the major player in software that would read handwriting. Scripto seemed much smaller, and also it appeared to be integrated with Omeka. Overall, this was a fun learning experience. I took away much more than I expected. My work was done remotely, but I plan to travel to Baltimore this summer to meet my alternative spring break mentor and tour the library. You should definitely apply for Alternative Spring Break 2025. Some experiences are remote and others are on site. All are valuable. Thanks for listening to my talk. I'm happy to respond to any questions.